Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about mandatory gun training and why I think it's a terrible idea, okay? And I'm saying this as a gun instructor, all right, who sometimes makes money training people. So you would think that I would have a financial incentive to want to mandate gun training, right? Because in this state, in Pennsylvania, gun training is not a requirement. You don't need training to go buy a gun. You don't need training to carry a gun. In this state, you can open carry without a permit, or you got to get a carry permit for concealed carry. It's weird the way they have it set up, but whatever, that's how it is. I'm against carry permits altogether. I think this should be I think the whole country should be constitutional carry. But in this state, if you want to go get, let's say, a carry permit, it's a shall issue state, which means that once you give your application to the sheriff's department, unless they have a specific reason for denying it to you, right? Meaning that you've been convicted of some violent crime, they cannot deny it to you, and even if they do, let's say they deny it for some minor crime, you can still challenge it in court. So in this state, it is not, gun training is not a requirement for getting a carry permit or buying a gun. And if we compare this to other states where it is a requirement, we see that there's not an increased accident rate in this state, right? Because there's no mandatory gun training requirement. Now, I can't give you the actual statistics on that, but I can tell you this: if that was the case, if there was an elevated rate of gun accidents in this state, all right, compared to other states where gun training was mandatory, you can bet your bottom dollar that the Democrats would be basically, making, they would be letting us know that, right? You'd see this in the news every day. They would be pushing, hey, those states that have the gun training requirement, they have a lower rate of accidents. Your state, which doesn't have it, has a much higher rate of accidents. But that's not the case. They can't say it because it's not truth. So I'm gonna take that as I'm kind of backing into that fact, all right? But the fact that Democrats aren't pushing gun training along those lines. Okay, so why do Democrats push gun training, or not just Democrats, but anti-gunners in general? Because even if they don't start out this way, eventually they know that they can raise the training requirements and training expenses to a level that will be either very expensive or very time costly, right? So that people will not want to do it. So it's a way of gun control, right? If you can make the training requirements so high or so expensive that people don't want to do it, then they're not going to qualify to buy guns or get carry permits or whatever. So that is a way of limiting people's access to their gun rights. Okay, so that's why I'm, even as a gun instructor that sometimes makes money off training people, I am against mandatory gun training requirements. Okay, so that's the first reason. Okay, now the second reason is because I know that if you try and force people to take some type of a gun training class, right, they're gonna resent it. Right, I know I would. Right, if you force me to take because normally, like I've done plenty of even as an instructor. Sometimes I'll go as a student and I'll take gun training classes. At this point, like 99% of the stuff that I hear in the class, I'm already aware of. But hey, there's always that 1% or that 0.5% chance that I might hear something new. Plus, I get to see other people, interact with them, see how. I see other instructors teach and what their teaching style is and how students, interact with those instructors. So it gives me other ideas along those lines. So I'm all for, getting gun training and doing, going to different classes on lots of different scenarios. I'm all for it, but it should not be mandatory. Okay. Now, here's the thing. Like I was starting to say, reason number two: if you force people to take training classes, they're going to resent it. They're going to reject the information. And the typical example of this is, think about when people learn to drive, right? They force people to go and take these driver's ed classes, and lots of people, let's just say lots of people resent that. Okay, so they tell you in those driver's classes that you can't speed, you have to follow the law. So what do most young men want to do as soon as they get behind the wheel? They want to speed, right? They want to speed, and they usually learn the hard way that they shouldn't speed by getting into an accident. That's the way it works. I know that's the way it worked for me when I was a teenager, and that's the way I've seen it work for lots of other people. So when you try to mandate training, people reject it. Okay, they go the opposite way. You're going to tell them that they have to carry, because like a lot of times when I train people, if they're at the level where we're ready to talk about carrying a gun, I tell them that you gotta carry the gun in a holster, not just down your pants, okay? And they will usually accept that information. You put me in a scenario where now I'm in a class that's mandated, and I tell them that, and they're gonna reject that information. As soon as they get out of the class, they're gonna shove the gun down their pants and walk around that way, okay? So if you try to force information down people's throats, they're going to reject it. They're more likely to accept it if they make a decision on their own that they want to go get that training. Now, the other thing is there's lots of different avenues of training. The internet, these videos that I do are a great avenue for training. It doesn't, obviously you do need live training, one-on-one training, but there's still a lot of information that you can get by watching training videos. And I posted lots of them. In fact, it's a great idea because then when you get to the class, because a lot of people say, well, why do you do all these training videos? Aren't you kind of like giving the milk away, right? You're not charging people for it. Well, here's the thing, knowing it and doing it are two separate things, right? Especially doing it under stress. So it's actually a lot easier for me, and I think that people learn a lot easier if they already have a general idea of what they're going to be learning, right? And then when they come to a training class, then they actually do it and they hear it for a second time. I find that they learn a lot better. So a lot of times when people contact me for training, I will, they tell me about what type of training they're doing or what level they're at. I will actually send them links to a couple of these videos that I have posted on my channel to introduce the ideas that I want to teach them. And then when they come here, then it's a one-on-one thing. They actually get to go through it, and I find that people learn faster. Now, the other thing is that with a lot of these training classes, like for example, I'm a certified NRA instructor, right? So a lot of the classes are like 8-hour classes. Now here's the thing: when you're an NRA instructor, it doesn't mean that that's the only thing that you are. It means that I'm basically certified to teach their classes. So if I'm going to be teaching their class, basically, for that one class, I'm an NRA instructor. But when I leave, when the class is out of session, then I'm not an NRA instructor. I'm just a general instructor, and I can teach whatever I want, however I want to teach it. But the important thing I was trying to bring out there is that the NRA classes that I sometimes teach, I used to teach them a lot more. I don't teach them that much anymore. They are 8-hour classes, and what I find is that 8 hours, which is the same thing with the hunter safety classes, they're 8-hour classes, right? And a lot of these states where they mandate training, they're like 8 to 12-hour classes. People, after about an hour, they start losing interesting things. They start, their ability to absorb information kind of stops. So I find that like even the NRA 8-hour classes, I can compress that information into 2 hours, and people will learn it a lot faster. And obviously, I'm doing it in small groups, because if you have, let's say, a group of like 10 people in a class or 15 people in the class, then yeah, it's going to get stretched out. But if a lot of times when I'm teaching a class, I only got 2 people in the class, I can compress all that same information into just 2 hours, and people actually learn it a lot faster. And what happens is with a lot of these 8-hour classes, right, that are mandated 8 hours, basically the instructor, and this is something I've been trained to do as an instructor, basically I have to stretch the class out to make it last 8 hours. So what ends up happening is we get into like conversations. Well, I'll talk to students. Well, what do you think about this, and what do you think about that, and what's your experience? So it becomes it becomes very chatty. The real goal there is just to stretch it out for 8 hours and not have people completely fall asleep on me. So I tend to not do those type of classes. It's just I feel that it's very wasteful in terms of time. So like I was saying, people tend to learn better in if they're doing a 1 hour training session or up to 2 hours of training session and on multiple days. Okay, so on the first time I'm training somebody, you know, it's kind of like driver's ed day one. I'm teaching them, okay, this is the gun, these are the safety rules. You know, this is how you shoot. Right, we're just doing target shooting. They need to do that on several days, different days. You know, so they need, let's say, like 3 or 4 days of maybe 30 minutes or 1 hour of training, of practical shooting, you know, under my guidance. You know, and they'll learn their basic, you know, gun safety handling stuff that way. They'll absorb it a lot better over a number of days. You know, and then after that, you know, if they're up to it, if they're interested in it, then we start talking about self-defense inside the home. And again, there's a lot of stuff to cover there. So again, I prefer to break it up over a long period of time. You know, do, like, say 5 training sessions. You know, of about, let's say, an hour to 2 hours each, right? And then after they've had some time to digest that, then I'll bring them back and we'll talk about you know, self-defense outside the home. Where now I'm teaching people how to carry a gun, you know, draw from a holster safely without shooting themselves in the foot or in the hand. You know, how to use cover. You know, part of the things I do is I teach them how to interact with the police afterwards, how to interact with other people in society afterwards. So there's a lot of things that are covered, but what I find is if I try to ram all that information into one 8-hour class, people basically absorb about, you know, like, I mean, they might remember by the end of the day if I test them, right? They might remember 90% of stuff, but then if I were to test them, let's say 2 weeks later, they're only going to remember about 10 to 20%. Okay, so the point is, that's why mandated training is a terrible idea, because you're going to try to fit it into some type of a structure that doesn't fit all people. You know, so basically I assess my students, right, and I see, okay, this person, you know, they can only handle a 1 hour training session. Hey, that guy, you know what, they can handle, you know, a 3 hour training session. Or this person, I have to spoon feed it to him slowly over a number of different sessions. Hey, that person is, you know, they've already seen a bunch of my videos. I can give them a lot more information a lot faster. So the type of training that I do is, you know, it's very different for different people. You know, it's all going in the same direction, but it's very different for different people. And you can't mandate that the way they you know, like these driver's ed classes that are mandated. You got to cover these certain things in a certain number of hours. You know, nobody actually learns to drive in the driver's ed class. You know, you learn to drive after you do your driver's ed class. You know, you go out with your friend or your mother or your father, you know, and they actually take you around. You're actually driving the car around, and they're talking to you, you know, as you're driving, you know, and giving you little tips, and, you know, so, you know, it takes a much longer period of time. So gun safety and gun handling is the same thing. You know, you can't force that into a single class in a certain number of hours. That's something that is very student-oriented and usually has to be spread out over a longer period of time. And that information shouldn't only come from one source, right? It shouldn't just come from me. Because I tell people, listen to the stuff I tell you, watch my videos, but also watch other videos out there. You'll get a lot of different ideas. At times, it may even be conflicting, but what you're going to do is, as you gain experience, right, you know, you're going to hear certain things, like you watch, like I say, 10 different instructors talk to you. You know, you're going to see that 8 of those instructors are kind of saying the same thing. All right, well, those 8 things are probably correct. All right, the 2 that, you know, are saying something completely different. Well, you know, let's put that in the back shelf for a little while and let's continue to study. You know, so that's kind of how I recommend that people learn. Right, I don't tell them just listen to me and do the things that I tell you. I say, listen to things I tell you. You know, watch some of my videos. But watch other videos, listen to other instructors as well. Everybody's got something to teach you, and then you kind of pick and choose what's going to work for you, right? But you know, certain basic things are going to be the same. You know, safety rules: guns always in safe direction, fingers off trigger until you're ready to shoot. All guns are always loaded. So that you're going to hear over and over and over and over again, no matter where you go. You know, certain things like carrying a gun in the holster. You know, so those things are pretty standard. You know, so those are my thoughts. I think that mandated training is a bad thing. I think it drives people away from getting good training. I think it's going to just basically force them into these classes that are structured in such a way that are going to be extremely boring, and that people are basically going to end up rejecting that information because it's being forced down their throat. So I hope you guys found this, my opinion, interesting. I just wanted to kind of put that out there for you guys. If you got some ideas of your own, please put them in the comment section. If you're not a member of the channel, subscribe. Talk to you guys soon.